There are over 10,000 species of birds on Earth that lay eggs. So why is it that almost every egg on your plate came from just one of them? For most of human history, eggs meant whatever you could find. Climb a tree, rob a nest, hope the bird didn't come back. Wild birds only nest for a few weeks a year. A wild jungle hen might lay a dozen eggs, total, in 12 months. Then, around 10,000 years ago in Southeast Asia, something changed. Humans didn't just take eggs anymore, they kept the bird. It's one of the oldest domestication stories on the planet, and it happened almost by accident as a byproduct of raising birds for meat and ritual, not eggs. Within a few thousand years, these birds had traveled far beyond the jungle, into Egypt, into Sumer, into the earliest cities on Earth. By around 1500 BCE, chickens were already a fixture in Egyptian farmyards, no longer just meat on the hoof, but a walking daily source of food. The Romans took it further. Eggs weren't just food, they opened the meal. A Roman dinner almost always started with one. Romans even figured out how to preserve them, packed in salt, oil, or bran, so eggs could survive a long journey or a long winter. Centuries later in medieval Europe, the church gave the egg a strange new power by banning it during Lent. For 40 days, no eggs were eaten, which meant hens kept laying while nobody was collecting. By Easter, farms were sitting on a surplus. That surplus is the actual origin of the Easter egg, a tradition born less from theology and more from a farming loophole. But here's the twist. For a long time, historians assumed chickens were bred for eggs almost from the start. New evidence says otherwise. Buried along ancient trade routes, researchers found something small but telling: eggshell fragments, dated to around 400 BCE. That date matters. It's the earliest solid proof we have of chickens being kept specifically for their eggs, not just for meat or ceremony. And these eggshells weren't found in one isolated village. They turned up all along the Silk Road for over 1,000 years. Chickens were traveling with the traders and thriving because, unlike their wild ancestors, these birds had learned to lay eggs no matter the season. That single trait, laying out of season, is the whole story. Wild birds nest with the seasons. These birds didn't stop. A wild red junglefowl still lays around 12 eggs a year. A modern hen lays over 300. That gap, 12 versus 300, didn't happen by chance. It took thousands of years of humans quietly choosing which birds bred next. Chickens weren't the only bird on the table, though. Plenty of others were laying too, and some still had real advantages. Take the duck, domesticated around the same era in the same part of the world, and still a kitchen staple across Asia today. A duck egg is bigger and richer than a chicken egg, prized in dishes like salted eggs and century eggs across China and Southeast Asia. But ducks eat more to produce that egg, and they don't do well packed into the tight housing that makes chicken farming so cheap. Then there's the quail. Tiny bird, tiny egg, but pound for pound, one of the most efficient layers on Earth. Quail mature fast and lay constantly, up to 300 eggs a year from a bird you could hold in one hand. The problem is size. A quail egg is a garnish, not a breakfast. It's a gourmet ingredient, never going to feed a family alone. Geese go the opposite direction entirely. Enormous eggs, packed with flavor, but the birds barely lay at all. A goose might give you 30 eggs a year, each one several times the size of a chicken egg. Rich but rare. And geese only lay for a few weeks a year, need far more land, and simply can't scale the way a chicken farm can. Then there's the extreme end of the scale, the ostrich, laying an egg the size of 24 chicken eggs combined. One ostrich egg can feed a dozen people, but the shell is so thick, you practically need a saw to open it. Ostriches also breed slowly and need specialized farms, which makes their eggs a novelty item, never a daily staple. And beyond farmed birds, plenty of wild eggs are still eaten somewhere in the world, but they're rare, seasonal, or simply illegal to collect today. So if ducks are richer, quail are efficient, and geese are enormous, how did the chicken end up winning the whole game? It comes down to one boring but powerful word: efficiency. Chickens turn feed into eggs better than almost any other bird we farm. Pound for pound, a chicken produces more eggs per bag of feed than a duck or a goose ever could. Add in a lifespan built for speed. Chickens mature fast, breed easily, and a modern layer can hit 300 eggs a year. Compare that to a goose taking years to mature, laying only weeks a year. The math simply doesn't compete. Then came the 20th century, and farming stopped looking like a farmyard at all. Wire floor barns, automated feeders, egg conveyor belts, technology that let one farm manage what used to take 100 families. Today's version of that same idea is almost unrecognizable. Vast, climate-controlled, automated from feeding to packing. The result, chickens now produce somewhere around 93% of every egg eaten on the planet. In 2023 alone, the world produced somewhere around 91 million tons of eggs, the overwhelming majority of it chicken. Eggs also happen to be perfect cargo. They pack tight, they keep in the cold, and they survive a long trip without much fuss. That combination, efficient to raise, easy to scale, simple to ship, is what really built the modern egg industry. But eggs never stayed just an economic story. They became a symbol, long before anyone was counting tons. That Lent-driven surplus we talked about earlier eventually turned the egg into a symbol of Easter itself, of new life after a long, empty season. Judaism gives the egg its own meaning too. On the Passover table, it stands for both loss and renewal, side by side. In China, eggs take on a completely different life, steeped in tea and spices for tea eggs, or cured for weeks into century eggs. In Japan, a sweet rolled omelet called tamago shows up at breakfast tables, while quail eggs top bowls of ramen across the country. And across Southeast Asia, a fertilized duck egg called ballet is a common street snack. Proof that not every culture draws the same lines around eggs. Chicken eggs, meanwhile, kept a much simpler role. Mild, neutral, and endlessly useful in a batter, a sauce, or a cake. That neutrality became a marketing advantage too. Cage-free, omega-3 enriched, recipe trends online. The chicken egg stayed impossible to avoid. So here's the real answer. Chicken eggs didn't win because they're the best egg. They won because they're the most practical one. A small bird, a modest egg, and a farm that fits in a fraction of the space a duck or goose would need. Ducks, geese, quail, and ostriches never disappeared. They just became specialists, niche players in a game the chicken learned to dominate. It took thousands of years of quiet, patient breeding to break the seasonal clock a wild bird is born with. Once that clock was broken, everything else, the farms, the trucks, the shelves, the 93%, was just infrastructure catching up. Next time you crack one open, remember, you're not just cooking breakfast. You're holding the end result of 10,000 years of one very good bet.